A podcast of one's own, challenging the status quo, keeping feminist discourse in the limelight, striving for gender equality. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of A Podcast of One's Own. Thank you so much for tuning in again. You're here with me, Nicole, your communications manager, and it's a solo podcast this week, but I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So I'm just going to have a little chat about gender and music. I ran this session recently and it had a great reception. We could barely fit into the 2-hour session, which was really good, and everyone really participated. And quite a lot of people were surprised to find that so many mainstream songs really are problematic, and there was other songs that people hadn't really read into the lyrics before, which were songs that they were big fans of. And then after they took a minute to actually recognise what the lyrics were portraying, quite a few people were shocked by it. So yeah, I'm just going to get started off with chatting a little bit about misogyny in music, which I'm sure all of our listeners are familiar with. It's a mainstream problem. When we refer to misogyny in music, I'm just referring to lyrics or videos or other aspects in music that support, glorify, justify, or normalise objectification or exploitation or victimisation of women. Yeah, all of that in a nutshell. Just misogyny in either their music videos or their lyrics. And it's sad that a lot of popular artists do this and continue to make a lot of money. And we discussed whether or not this is harmful. We discussed a little bit about being a bad feminist, about whether you should just be allowed to listen to this music. And a lot of scholars have proposed various explanations for why the presence of misogyny in music is such an issue and why it proliferates specifically in rap music. One of the reasons was that rap artists use misogynistic lyrics to assert their masculinity or to demonstrate authenticity as rappers. But then other academics have stressed that misogyny and that type of sex sells, essentially, and that they're engaging in misogyny to achieve commercial success. Sadly, I kind of agree with the other reason, is that misogynistic music is just simply a product of its environment, and it reflects the mainstream attitudes towards women, and these artists have internalized these negative stereotypes about women, which is sad. So I'm leaning towards that. Please let me know if you disagree, or if you're leaning more towards the sex sells argument, or whether you do think that masculinity plays a large role into men sort of adhering to these standards of masculinity, and that they believe that one aspect of this is to be sexually frivolous or to chase women. So misogyny proliferates in the music industry, and this has been demonstrated through the Me Too movement as well. The men at the top of these industries are utilising their power to take advantage of women and to oppress women, and that then shows in the music that they're creating as well, sadly. So what we done is we went over a few lyrics. We didn't play any of the ones that were misogynistic because we're not contributing towards that culture or the artists. There's countless, but to mention a few, we done like Lil Wayne and Love Me in 2013. One of the aspects that we touched upon, which was shown by Lil Wayne, is that the music industry tends to overlook how some musicians flaunt their love for women close to them, like their sisters and their mothers, but completely disrespect women in a more general sense. And we found that this seems really common throughout rap and hip-hop for male artists. And so this album, when Lil Wayne opened it up, he had like this beautiful touching tribute from his mum. And then the next track, he featured a verse from Triple X Temptation, I think his name is, or XXX Temptation, who was an artist who faced domestic abuse allegations and was done for aggravated battery of his pregnant ex-girlfriend, which is just completely dumbfounding. It's incredible. And these sort of things have just been so normalised that hasn't been recognised, or that he wasn't called out for it on such a large scale. And so, yeah, we spoke about the role of mothers in hip-hop and rap as well. Kanye, his song Hey Mama back in 2005, beautiful lyrics. His mum was crying, and so they knelt on the kitchen floor and he said, "Mama, I'ma love you till you don't hurt no more." which is really beautiful. But then he comes out with one of his recent songs saying that he's still going to end up having sex with Taylor Swift, undoubtedly, because he got her famous. And so he's speaking about entitlement to other women's bodies and also complete disrespect for his partner that he's with now. And so we looked at when the tables were turned and men sort of started to recognize that this is an issue. Well, one case in particular, Nas, he brought out a song called Daughters in 2012. And he says, they grow fast. One day she's your little princess. Next day she's talking boy business. What is this? They say the coolest players and foulest heartbreakers in the world. God gets us back. He makes us have precious little girls. And so with the song, he really was taking a strategic approach towards discouraging sexism. And the song explores his struggle as seeing his daughter grow up in a sexist world, and he urges men to consider how they treat women in that light. One day they'll have daughters who'll be subjected to every attitude that mainstream hip-hop has been encouraging up until now. But what is so problematic and what is upsetting is that it took for him to have a close relationship, in this case having a daughter, for him to realise just how problematic it was. And I feel like that's something that I've experienced before, that's that the feminist movement is aware of as well, that in cases of sexual abuse or mistreatment towards women, people will say, can you imagine if that was your sister? What if that was your mum? Or that person has a brother, that person has a husband? And then the worth of the woman then only comes vicariously via the male, and that he deserves more respect. And you've seen that present in club culture as well, like we've spoke about before on the previous podcast. When someone's coming on to you in the club to try and get them to leave you alone, you can try every excuse, which doesn't help. But as soon as you say you have a boyfriend, that's fine. They'll leave you alone because somehow they have more respect that you're attached to another man, than whether you're just not interested. Side note, but I think if you've listened to the podcast up until now, you realise that that's what we like to do, because everything's interconnected, and that's the joy of intersectionality and feminism. So, moving on to more misogynists in music. Yay, I promise there's light at the end of the tunnel. So, Chris Brown, yeah, he's horrific. So, we were looking at lyrics from his song Biggest Fan, and he's essentially talking about rape. He says, 2 girls I'm watching, no is not an option. I'm going to be the captain of the ship. They're going to have my boat rocking. Are you ready? I'm going to take what's mine and get comfortable. Slow and easy. I'm kind of tipsy from this wine, so what I say might be a little confusing. I got a Magnum in my wallet. I'm going to pull it out. I bet that I use it. I'm going to make you scream. And so he's been... I think he's trying to get away with like the sheer aggression here, which is unusual because... his other lyrics and other artists just do it unabashedly. But when he refers to Magnum, it could be the condom or the gun. And I think that's why he says prior to that, this might be a little confusing. But with how violent the whole of the song is and those verses are and the bars that lead up to that, he's done the double entendre to try and get away with just how sheerly violent it is. And Chris Brown, this is an artist who, so 2 weeks ago, he was in court for alleged rape, and he's already released a song this year in 2019, which has been a success, and he continues to have a successful career after we can all remember. Well, it seems like a lot of the world forgot, especially the music industry and his fans, when he so severely beat Rihanna, his partner, and... yeah, he's violent and he's misogynistic, and yet he still hasn't had his career hindered by that sheer level of abuse. And it's just so problematic that they can continue to get away with this, and just shows how harmful an impact that has on society, because it normalizes violence. I mean, not only are they fantasizing about being violent in their music, and this is a platform where they're able to express these desires which they can't in society, is they are actually carrying out these acts like Chris Brown and perpetuating this idea that men can be violent towards women and have no consequences, and the people that listen to their music and actually enjoy his music either support that ideology or are receiving that ideology, and it's being normalized. And so we moved on to speak a little bit about Robin Thicke, Blurred Lines, and this was really controversial when it came out. And again, this was a song that quite a few of our members didn't really understand why it was so controversial, or the lyrics had just gone over their head. And so we broke down the lyrics, and just to sort of get a better understanding of why they were so problematic. So not only is it does he say 3 times, I know you want it, I can't let it get past me, I hate these blurred lines. So this is all talking about consent here, and by saying I know you want it is just such a problematic sentence, because for some reason a lot of people claim to not understand consent. They claim that there are blurred lines, and I just can't fathom this, because consent has to be explicit all the time, and there's no blurred lines. And so yeah, I just think those lyrics are atrocious. And then he goes on to say, get down, get up, do it like it hurt, what you don't like work. And so this implies that men should be in control during sex, that women should perform sexual positions that they don't like or that are considered to be work, or positions that are painful to women because they're more pleasurable to men. And this just enrages me. And there's a fantastic TED talk on it. So many girls feel pain during sex, and when people gain their understanding of sex through porn and through horrific lyrics like this, then that leads towards a culture where we have an orgasm gap, where women can be with so many sexual partners and actually never orgasm, and where women feel like they have to be performative in the bedroom and don't actually enjoy sex, which is heartbreaking, it's dehumanizing, and it's just not true, because we love sex too. And then he goes on to say, he tried to domesticate you, but you're an animal, it's in your nature, just let me liberate you. So this is just reinforcing the sort of dehumanizing message that he's given out in the whole song. Lack of consent, even if there is consent, you have to preferably should hurt or do it the way that I want you to do it. So it's gives me the rage, and these are all popular songs. And so we also spoke a little bit about internalized misogyny or internalized sexism, which we ran a session on recently, but this is also present for women in the music industry. So we spoke about Meghan Trainor, which is the song which is wrapped up in a nutshell of female empowerment. So the lyrics, she says, yeah, it's pretty clear, I ain't no size 2, but I can shake it like I'm supposed to do. I've got that boom that all the boys chase and all the junk in all the right places. But yeah, like I'm supposed to do is implying that women are primarily sexual beings, that they're inherently sexual or are obligated to be so. And then she goes on to say, my mama told me not to worry about my size. A boy's like a little more booty to hold at night. And so yeah, it's thin shaming, and it's also reinforcing the idea that your self-worth is dependent on how fudgeable you are. Reference to the last podcast. But yeah, so even to the extent that your mum would tell you when you were younger that don't worry, you can love your body because men would like to grab more booty to hold at night. Problematic on so many levels. And then she wraps up with, you know I won't be no stick figure silicone Barbie doll, which not only is she thin shaming, she's just not on the wavelength of pro-choice feminism. She's shaming women who undergo cosmetic surgery. And it's sad because she claims that this is it can be empowering for her, but she's been victim to the fact that she's had to be empowered to release herself from the shackles that have told her that she's not good enough because she doesn't fit these body standards that are perpetuated by the beauty industry. And instead she's flipped the script to then enforce that onto thin women, so she just doesn't understand it, which is sad. Maybe it's empowering for her, but she is just perpetuating these problematic notions that women's bodies have to be a certain way and that they're there for the pleasure of men, sadly. we dissected quite a few songs. So we dissected Drake, Hotline Bling, and yeah, we had a lot of people that loved this song when it came out. I love his beats. I don't think he's talented, but that's just me, you know. He's an earworm though. Definitely can get down to it when it comes on. But yeah, Hotline Bling. And so it's just like when I left the city, you started wearing less and going out more. You're going places where you don't belong. You used to be a good girl, stay home. You're in the zone, and yeah, it's just, if this is real, it looks quite creepy as well that he's been with someone and then after he split up, she's gone out and started doing her own thing, and so it's quite controlling, and it's also suggesting that women have to behave a certain way and adhere to a certain standard to be ladylike. Like, I used to be a good girl, you were in the zone. So sorry, Drake, we can go out and do what we want to. Thank you. But yeah, that's on the lesser end of the scale of a lot of the songs that we looked at. So, I mean, it can be implied, and this just suggests how normalized it is, that this is just a part of our culture. And so, yeah, we spoke about being a bad feminist, which we also did a session on recently. And being a bad feminist is this notion that in order to be a feminist, you have to be perfect and you have to adhere to every single value all the time and never have any slip-ups. And that can put a lot of people off claiming to be a feminist, because they're like, oh, I could be a feminist but I wear makeup, or I could be a feminist but I do this. And so we'll talk in more depth about the notion of being a bad feminist in another podcast. But with regards to music, where we're asking, can you be a feminist and love hip-hop and rap music? And so some of the points that came up surrounding this issue was that society we live in was built on misogyny, and so to reject all of the products of this is to reject a great deal of our culture, including music. If you were to be completely a puritist and be like, nope, I'm not listening to anything that's misogynistic whatsoever, then there's a lot of music you can listen to, you can put on the radio, sadly. Music provides a medium in which we can fantasize and express suppressed desires or thoughts, is another argument. And classic songs that we've heard throughout our whole lives that were written before the fight for gender equality became mainstream, and so we shouldn't police them and can recognise that they were from a different period culturally. And we have progressed so quickly, we've come leaps and bounds. And so this point came up when they were making Get Out of Compton, and they were putting in some Ice Cube songs, and some of them were just so overtly sexist and misogynistic and violent, essentially, towards women, that they were thinking of changing the lyrics, and there was a big debate surrounding this. I'm not sure if they actually changed it in the end, though. There's another one to go and look up. We read this tweet from Ava DuVernay, and she said, to be a woman who loves hip-hop at times is to be in love with your abuser, because the music was and is that, and yet the culture is ours. And so we discussed that. I mean, should you be able to just express yourself and fantasize? It's an art form. You're able to do the same in prose and literature and poetry. Should you be able to do the same in rap and hip hop? And is it considered character rap and hip hop? But why does it matter? But to make real progress towards gender equality, we gotta accept it is beneficial to stop listening to music that hinders that process in any way, which is a lot of our old favourites in rap and hip hop, and now in pop culture. Misogynistic music normalises the objectification, sexualisation and violence against women, and so it reinforces rape culture. And we spoke about the rape culture pyramid. It starts off with normalization, leads to degradation, the removal of autonomy, and explicit violence. And so down in the normalization section, we have rape jokes, boys will be boys, victim blaming, locker room banter, and then we have the degradation, which is like stalking, following, revenge porn, catcalling, whistling, unsolicited dick pics. And then to the removal of autonomy, sexual coercion, threatening, dosing, covert condom removal, up to the most horrific forms of violence this kind of music is on that spectrum which is perpetuating rape culture, and a lot of it severely degenerates women, which is worrying. So yeah, I mean, I think you get to a stage where, I mean, I still love my old favorites, and you can sort of listen to them with that awareness is the first step. But if you're listening to it with other people, do other people have that awareness? Does everyone have that awareness? And I think with time, now there are songs that I used to love, and the same with chick flicks, which I have no idea why they've been termed chick flicks, because they're just as problematic. Now I've got to the point where slowly but surely I'm starting to weed out all of those old songs because I just can't do it anymore and I have to turn them off. And so I think everyone's on their spectrum, and your tolerance to these kind of lyrics will change over time. And so why does it matter? I really think it does, personally. I mean, numerous studies have found a direct correlation between the consumption of misogynistic music and negative beliefs about women. There was one study that found that men who listened to sexually violent rap lyrics were significantly more likely to express adversarial sexual beliefs, like the belief that that men should dominate women in the bedroom, particularly like we seen in Robin Thicke's song. And we had other studies that we looked over that showed that rap videos which contain images of women in sexually subordinate roles increase female subjects' acceptance of violence against women. So the women in these studies somehow thought that they would be more deserving of violence, which is devastating. We touched upon some reading material as well. Women, Images and Realities. That's from Webster. And this music sends a message to young adults, especially black youth, that their enemy is black girls and women. And since the music portrays women as selfish, untrustworthy, and as subordinate, this really is on the agenda for black feminism. And Ridman and Lee, co-authors of the book, found that exposure to violent and misogynistic rap music strengthens the association between black men and negative attributes. So it's harmful on a racial level, and people who are exposed to violent and misogynistic rap music are more likely to perceive black men as hostile and sexist. We already touched upon the issue of music and toxic masculinity. And so toxic masculinity, as we've spoken about before in previous podcasts and a lot in our sessions, is one of the ways in which the patriarchy is harmful to men. And so it refers to the socially constructed attitudes that describe the masculine gender and men. Their role is violent, unemotional, sexually aggressive, and so forth. And so this ideal is often perpetuated and permeated by the music that we listen to. And it reinforces the pervasive idea of male-female interaction as competition, not cooperation. The idea that men cannot truly understand women and vice versa, and that no true companionship can be had between different sexes without there being a sexual element. Expectation that real men are strong and showing emotion is incompatible with being strong, and anger is either framed as the exception to the rule or not as an emotion. And all of this is so harmful for men. I mean, men need to express their emotions, men need to have loving relationships with each other and with other women on platonic levels as well as intimate levels. And the idea that a real man cannot be a victim of abuse, or that talking about it is shameful, which is surreal because 40%, well in the UK anyway, 40% of domestic abuse cases are men. And it's so taboo, it's swept under the rug, and there's only one place in Scotland, I'm not sure how many in England, but there's only one place in Scotland, a refuge for men who suffer from domestic abuse, when they make up 40% of the cases. And this is a direct correlation from toxic masculinity, is would men actually feel like they could go and seek the help that they need. And music like this and our culture reinforces these ideals that men have to attain to this. They have to attain to an unattainable standard, which is why it's so harmful. We touched upon examples of toxic masculinity in music, like No Scrubs. I do love the song. But But yeah, Scrub's a guy that can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. You gotta know it. This sort of perpetuates the toxic ideal that men have to earn money to be masculine and be desirable to women, and at the same time, it simultaneously reinforces the idea that women are only attracted to status and money. And it places an importance on power, status. Even though it's very subtle, these subtleties are shaping our views, the way we relate to one another, and form our understanding of gender. And you've got old classics like Biggie with Juicy, Time to Get Paid, Blow Up Like the World Trade, just reinforcing the importance of money and attaining to have material commodities, which we all know hopefully isn't the most important. We've got 50 Cent, also another really popular artist back in the day, with Many Men. Just sheer glorification and normalization of violence, murder, romanticizes gang violence and pack mentality, reinforces negative black male stereotypes of engaging in violence and crime. And this music is popular because it does tap into the core somewhere, and that people will enjoy listening to it because they fantasize about letting go, or because they think that this is glamorous. And so we also spoke a little bit about why does this proliferate in rap music, that we touched upon in the beginning, which could be street authenticity, that they create explicit violent lyrics against women to prove their authenticity as like gangsters. They associate themselves with hypermasculine self-portrayals and hostile representations of women. Sadly, again, the commercial incentives like we spoke about before. And yeah, so there's these authors, Ronald Weitzer and Karis E. Kubrin, that identified 5 common misogynistic themes that come up in rap lyrics. And that was a comprehensive study that found the derogatory naming and shaming of women, sexual objectification of women, legitimization of violence against women, distrust of women, and celebration of prostitution and pimping. But there is hope. There is hope. So hip-hop and rap music have traditionally been overwhelmingly masculine expressions, but now it's so important that we have a look at the role of female artists within the hip-hop community. So women had traditionally been rejected or hindered to participate in hip-hop sort of brotherhood, but women in hip-hop have then made careers for themselves. They've adapted into the mass-marketed, male-defined industry. There's a black feminist critique. So black feminism, as I've already mentioned before, but that just refers to a school of thought stating that sexism, class, oppression, gender identity, and racism are inextricably bound together. So Margaret Hunter, in 2011, black feminist, said the commercialization of hip-hop for largely white audiences became linked to the overwhelming objectification of women of colour in rap lyrics and videos. And images of women of colour predominate specifically in the ever-present strip club scenes in modern hip-hop videos. And so she said that because these sexual transactions are also racial, part of their appeal to buying audiences is the reinforcement of dominant narratives about African American and Latino women, and the symbolic protection of white femininity by its absence and representations. And so there is a lot of critique from different aspects of feminism. You can look at it through the black feminist lens, and because race is inextricably tied in with that. And so when we're talking about hip-hop, we're just referring to a whole generation, really, of people for whom hip-hop is such a powerful identity-shaping cultural force. And there's so many people that have no experience without hip-hop because they just haven't lived in one. So it really became a subculture, and it shaped so much of people's lives. And it is the only genre where the mainstream is and has been dominated by people of colour. And so this gives it the power for not only inclusiveness and promotion of intersectional feminism, but also for tackling the racial issues that are bound in and taking a black feminist stance. And so hip-hop feminism recognizes that hip hop is dominated by hypermasculine, heteronormative men and sexist content, and it aims to break through this by reorientating the focus to women and queer people. And so, like intersectional feminism, which was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and the Me Too movement by Tarana Burke, hip hop feminism was coined by a black woman, by Joan Morgan, and her philosophy was that you change hip hop and you can change society. So she wrote a book called When Chicken Heads Came to Roost. A hip hop feminist breaks it down. And so she said that hip hop feminism was a way of analysing and looking critically at hip hop. So if you can change hip hop, then you can change society. She acknowledges it as a powerful and empowering cultural force. And so thus the feminist hip hop revolution was born. And you could start this off with, let's say, Lil' Kim. And so she just started this incredible sexual legacy, which she launched it in the form of a super iconic promo poster. So she was the first high-profile female rapper. She completely flipped the script on female objectification in the rap industry in her album Hardcore. So she set herself apart by completely owning and weaponizing, really, and just unapologetically celebrating her sexuality. And this ended up in complete unprecedented success. So to date, she's sold more than 6 million copies worldwide. And so her lyrics are brilliant. So within the album, the album opens up with audio of paying a man $10 to masturbate over Kim before she cuts him short. And so, yeah, completely overtly sexual. So, but her being in control is a theme that runs throughout the whole album. So, Not Tonight as a rallying cry to women worldwide with a clear message that you're equally entitled to get pleasure out of sex. You should check out the lyrics. I don't want to read them all out too much because they are really, really overt. Her song Dreams, she recalls sexual fantasies of, so she's just completely unashamed, unabashed. She repeatedly flaunts her wealth and designer connections, which on first glance you could say it seems superficial, but the fact that black women are routinely paid significantly less and they're equally skilled to contemporaries, this message took on a completely new meaning. She was carving out success in this oppressive patriarchal world that had dominated hip hop before. And so we've got Salt and Pepper, Let's Talk About Sex, complete female empowerment, reclaiming female sexuality, encouraging discourse. Women don't need to play coy to their sexual desires. They say how it could be, how it should be, this sort of like essentially a utopia, just where women can talk about their sexuality and their sex and be liberated. And we have come leaps and bounds since then, which is fantastic. Their music video Shoop completely flipped the script by objectifying men. Not necessarily helpful, but it makes a statement. So the music video doesn't show the faces of men after like close-ups, what you'd call like sexy body shots. We've got Queen Latifah and with Unity in 1993. She was incredible, and she raises awareness of domestic abuse, sexual assault, street harassment. It's just complete empowerment. It's about women supporting other women, and she went hand in hand with Lauryn Hill. Her song Doo Wop, or That Thing, she challenges European beauty standards, tackles the necessity for power that's imbued within toxic masculinity, talks about absent fathers, and again, an incredibly empowering song. And so we led that to modern examples of hip-hop feminism today. So we've got Nicki Minaj, Anaconda. There was a lot of debate surrounding this. Is she reclaiming and celebrating female sexuality? Or is she just contributing and falling victim to this toxic cycle in which women are sexualized? But again, from a black feminist perspective, the way that white European beauty standards are perpetuated as desirable and the epitome of beauty. So that's what her stance was. She tweeted, "If I was a different kind of artist, Anaconda would be nominated for the best choreographed video of the year as well. Or if your video celebrates women with very slim bodies, you'll be nominated video of the year." And that was a lot of what she spoke about, is that because she had this larger curvaceous, voluptuous black body, essentially, that she was being shamed for that. And we spoke about Rihanna, S&M, completely overtly sexual again, kink positive, celebrating female sexuality. But there's also the counter argument that sex sells, and she's perpetuating the sexual objectification of women. And this debate is still ongoing, and this is something that feminists have to ask ourselves and that artists have to be conscious of. And like we've said before, the first step is just this awareness. It's modern day artists. We spoke about Janelle Monáe in her album Dirty Computer, feature length, incredible film. Afrofuturist. It's tied in artistically with sort of like sci-fi robotic interpretations. It's really interesting, and Beyonce done the same in some of her albums. But Janelle Monáe, her message is that oppression can be beaten by claiming your power. And then we have Beyonce, who's an avowed open feminist who's doing her work for the feminist movement via her music today. Well, I believe that gives us more than enough to consider. We really covered a lot of ground there, huh? There is so much more that we could go over, but believe it or not, even I don't want to listen to my own voice for 40 minutes. But hells yeah, if you stuck around this long, I'm feeling the love, and right back at you. We touched upon misogyny in music, internalized sexism, toxic masculinity in music, and what this means for society, and viewed this through a feminist lens. But, of course, we wrapped up the podcast with empowerment and the knowledge that times are changing, that we've come leaps and bounds, and it is okay to slip up and break it down to our old problematic faves, while we're on our journey to liberation and smashing the patriarchy. Oh yeah. Well, have a beautiful day and blast the music that makes you